Annie, your 5 step wealth framework really flips the script on the whole budget first mentality. And I have to agree, the budgeting is the B word. I try not to use it too much. But why do you think the budget first mentality, why do you think that approach keeps so many smart, capable women stuck?
I think there's a lot of reasons why it keeps people stuck, and also a lot of reasons why we tend to go for budgeting first. But the problem with going for budgeting first is that how can we budget for something if we don't know where we're trying to go? It's like trying to hit a bullseye, but you have no idea where the bullseye is. If we're just budgeting to budget, we don't know if we are going to make more money in the future, if we're trying to save up for a house, if we're saving for retirement. I mean, there's just all these pieces, and I think a lot of people think about either budgeting first or we just go straight for the job. We grow up, we're trained to go out and get a job, and we think we need to get a job and we need to have a budget. But I have found that there's actually one other piece that's really important that comes before both of those things, and that's your life vision. Without that life vision, those other two pieces are just going to be like spinning the wheels and potentially just staying in place.
So what is a life vision?
A life vision is specifically for your finances, thinking about where you want to go and what you want money to do for you. So it's something that's very personal, very emotional, honestly. And it's combining the things that you want to do in life to the way you want your daily life to look, the way you want, where you want to be in the next 10 years, where you want to be in 50 years, what you want to say you accomplished in your lifetime. It's all of those pieces. So I really encourage folks to be really reflective and start thinking, what do I want to do with my life? And then that will translate into what do I want to do with money to make that life possible.
And when you are working with clients, what how does that conversation go? I mean, do people have an answer of what do I want to do with my life, or does it really take some searching and figuring out?
I think it is a lifelong process, to be honest. There's some conversations that I've had with clients where we are starting to touch on some of those pieces, but really within coaching, we are just scratching the surface. This is going to be something you do forever because it also changes. I'd say in my own life, what I thought my dream life would be 10 years ago is different than what my dream life is now. So there's these big picture things, things that we know are value systems, like I want to spend time with family, I want to go on so many trips a year. And then there's, what type of house do I want to live in? And what activities do I want to be doing? How much free time do I have? Those things change over time. So it's good to be thinking about the vision and start the conversation, but it's really a lifelong pursuit.
Right, because if you have a vision and you start building it, then for some reason it changes or it shifts. You don't want to have this whole crisis of, wait, I planned out my whole life based on this vision and now it's changing. So you're kind of saying like it needs to be adaptable and, reflect really your values first, and then that's how you chart that course.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think for myself, freedom, flexibility, and choice are some of my key values. So the way that I choose to do work and create income, the way that I underspend so that I have extra savings if I want to make impulse decisions, those are all value based decisions that I make about the vision for my life. But how much I'm going to spend on a house, if my husband and I are going to upgrade to a more expensive house, whether or not I own a car, what type of car I own, how much I spend on groceries, how many trips I'm going to go on in a year, those things might shift from year to year, but the core values are really going to be the same.
It's kind of like a mission statement for a company. A
Yeah,
company creates their mission statement, and that's what drives it. The day-to-day goings on might change, or product focuses may change or what have you, but you're still following the mission. So it's almost as if you need to set your mission first, and then everything else underneath it starts to fall into place.
exactly. And that's why I think this is so important. And it's a piece that most people miss because, again, we're taught to just grow up and get a job. So we start with our income. And let's say you're making the average $60,000 salary. You then budget based on your income. And if you only do that, you might not ever think about, okay, well, do I want to increase that income? How strategically would I do that? Actually, I don't want to increase my income. I want to stay in this job and I'm going to have these goals where I budget the money that I do have to meet these goals. when you have that vision, it's going to change everything you do when it comes to how you create income and how you budget your money instead of just going straight to that without any direction. And I think that's why a lot of people feel like they're caught up in the rat race and they don't really know, they don't feel like a sense of purpose because they don't know where they're going with their money.
So that makes a lot of sense, because if you are kind of like letting your money control you or letting your income control you, and you're making a budget based off of that, like, okay, well, this is what I have to work with, so this is what I'm going to do. That's
Yeah.
how you could still feel broke, even earning good money, even, well above what the average income is, but you still feel broke because you're kind of letting it control you. So,
Mhm.
what's the number one blind spot many high achievers have when it comes to actually building wealth?
I think it's focusing too much on income. And I think the reason for that is that income is really glamorized. We see it online, people making $10,000 a month or make $1 million a year, whatever it is. We focus on income. But you're totally right that if you are making really good income, but you are spending everything you earn or even overspending to the point that you're in debt, you're going to be stuck in this cycle of having to work to create income. And you're going to feel either exhausted or like you're spinning your wheels. So income is super important. But if we don't know, again, what we're going to do with our money, income is going to potentially not get you where you want to go. So I like to focus on your spending and your investments. So your spending is making sure that you are actually spending under your means so that you have some left over to do something that's going to eventually get you out of having to work. And same with your investments. You're putting money into something that's going to hopefully grow over time to make you passive income so that you, again, don't have to work. So if you really want to reach flexibility and financial freedom, your income is a part of it, but the investment and the budgeting is where you're going to actually move towards that financial freedom.
So, you said, so you don't have to work. So you said that twice, right? Is that kind of the goal as far as creating that flexibility, is like working not just for the paycheck, but working for other reasons? But obviously, money is one reason of it, because we have to have money to survive and live and function. But
Yeah.
getting yourself to a place where um, you kind of know how much you need as far as what you need to earn, and then anything above that's extra. So if you're working above that, like, it's a choice.
Yeah, that's a great question. I just mentioned off the cuff not working as an ultimate goal, but one person may love working. They may want to never retire. And so their ultimate goal is being able to achieve something else, like the dream home or the flexible work where they only work half the year, but they want to keep working. So it doesn't necessarily have to be not working. I think the thing that you want to think about the most, though, is how you can leverage your time to, again, make the money you want to then live the life you want. So it's not just avoiding working, it's what do I want work to look like in my life? Do I want to work 40 hours a week, make so much, and live this certain life? Do I want to make enough hourly or in passive income that I only work so much time and spend the other time doing these hobbies and activities? So again, it all comes back really to your vision and what you intend to do. One thing that I've had my clients do, I think this activity is also in my book. You can create 3 different versions of your budget. So you can create your current minimum budget, what you need to get by, absolute minimum. You can create your nice to have budget, which would be your minimum plus some extra expenses. And then you can draft your dream budget. So if you were to create a vision, let's say you were to journal, my dream life includes all these things. You could then take that and turn it into numbers. So a dream budget. And you could actually say, this is how much it would cost me to live this dream life. And then from there, you could work backwards to start creating the income you want, rather than, like you said, working from the income and then really keeping yourself trapped within that income amount.
So here's my beef with the word budget. And it started like way long ago, back when mint.com was actually a thing. It doesn't even exist anymore, which I feel some satisfaction with, because really a lot of my frustration with budgets started from mint.com, because it would train you of saying, well, one, I feel like budgets like feel restrictive, right? They restrict you. You can only spend on what is completely necessary, and that is like housing and utilities and blah blah blah. And then anything above that is extra, and you're spending too much, you're going over, and it kind of creates like that, making you bad for spending money. Like, so I always say, like, whatever your needs are, your needs go beyond like just your utilities and your house and your, insurance or what have you. Some
Yeah.
houses need Netflix, other houses need other things. So being honest with yourself and understanding what do you need and working that into your budget. But I always find, I have 4 children. There's always something that comes up that is completely unexpected. Like, I never in my wildest dreams thought I was going to have this expense. And it happens like weekly, So how do we, and you want to keep things under control, right, as far as your spending goes, and spend under your means. But I feel like so often, and how do we address this, that like if we set up the plan of, okay, I'm going to spend under my means, right, okay, great,
Mhm.
and I'm doing awesome, I have this plan, then stuff just comes up, and it's stuff we never expected. Or how do we handle that then? Because then I feel like that's where we get out of control, or our spending starts to become too much.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I absolutely agree with you. I don't really like the term budgeting. I like the term financial planning or even crunching the numbers a little bit more because I feel like that's empowering. And that's how budgeting should feel. I think, a lot of people talk about giving every dollar an assignment, and that's what you can do. You can actually decide, I want to spend this amount on Netflix because that's something that's really important to me. And every night I'm going to enjoy some really amazing documentaries with my family. You should feel good about that. Or even if a sudden expense comes up, if you have the money or you understand how to get the money to cover that expense, that in itself is something that can be very empowering. So instead of taking the shame based approach of, I need to be perfect, I think of it more like you are the ultimate planner and you get to distribute your money in a way you want intentionally. And then you also will go with the flow. So when it comes to budgeting, I think, yeah, we just don't need to have this restrictive mindset. We really can think of it more like we're creating a plan. And then there's some really basic things you can do. So, number one, have some sort of emergency fund. That's always the basics. If you talk to any financial expert, they're going to tell you have a little bit in savings, even if that means setting aside $50 extra a month so that you have a buffer. That way, when those emergency expenses come up, you can pull from that. And then what I personally do, every single year I create my financial plan, and it's month by month what I expect to bring in, what I expect to, spend on. It's always related to my goals. And then every month I'm looking at that and I'm making adjustments. I recently had to pay for my dog to have teeth extracted, and it was something like $2,000. It was ridiculous. And so that was a huge blow to my budget. And it was like, okay, I'm going to adjust based on this. And month to month, I'm just looking at, where did I go over? Where did I go under? And it comes back to feeling empowered and making decisions. It never feels, guilt ridden or shame based. It's just, here's the information. Here's what I'm going to do moving forward.
And I go back to the mint.com, and I think that that's where it really ruined it for me, because something is always going to come up, always,
Yes.
right? Like, you say, well, I'm going to spend X amount on gas for this month. And then gas prices go up, which you have no control over, or like you go on a road trip, or you just happen to drive a lot that month. And then you go over budget. And the way the system used to work was it would take away from your next month. So
Yeah.
then it's like, wait, but if I set this number because of my historical spending, I'm going to go over, and I'm going to keep on going over. And then the numbers are red and it's angry at me, and it creates this whole like shame, right?
Yeah.
And so it's almost like, well, we can plan and then plan for the unexpected, because something's always going to come up. But
Yep.
when you're working with someone and you said you spend under your means, when they come to you and go, all right, here's my situation, here's everything. How do you even start that? How do you start to spend under your means?
So, what I usually do, I start with a financial audit. So, we're looking at every single thing going on in your life. What are your current debts? How much do you have in savings? How much do you have in investments? Are you renting or do you have a home? How much income are you bringing in? Do you have any side hustles? We're looking at all of those pieces. And then together we look at those pieces. And then again, we go back to their vision and we say, what are your goals? What do you want to do right now? Are you focused on paying off your debt? Are you focused on getting a different job so that you can bring in more income? So we're catering it to the specific things they want to do. And then usually what I'll have them do is fill out a spending plan of how they usually spend in a month. And we do an audit of that. So that can be very illuminating. They can look at it and say, again, this is averages. On average, I'm spending on this, this, this. And then we'll just talk about it. So how do you feel about it? Is this aligned to your values? Do you feel good about it? Do you want to continue this? Do you want to change anything? And it's just, again, information and planning. They're deciding, I want to keep this, I don't want to keep this. Actually, I've been doing this thing and I keep meaning to drop it, but I forgot to do it. So we're just looking at it, creating a next step. And then from there, looking at the difference between the income and the budget. So if the difference is, I can't really shift a lot in my budget, this is what I need to spend. Maybe the focus is, hey, you actually need to work with a career coach next to get into that different role to create more income, because that's going to ultimately make the difference. So depends on what their goals are and then how much they want to shift their current budget.
And I think that's good, because in this conversation has been coming up a lot of, well, maybe there needs to be an income shift. Maybe, we do need to have more money come in, because one, you may be, already living the best you can under your means, but you're still breaking even or going slightly over, and
Yeah.
that's not your fault. It doesn't make you a bad person. It's not, but then a change needs to be made, because you also don't want to cut back so much that like there's scarcity, like you feel like I'm so restricted, because that then creates like all types of other issues. So instead, coming at it another way, instead of cutting back, okay, how can we shift this? And instead of directing your energy to just cutting back, how can we direct your energy to potentially bringing in more?
Absolutely. Yep. And that, for example, in my own life, when I was in that social work role, I was making $26,000. I at first focused on what can I do within this income, did the best that I could, and was so limited in my budget and was able to stick to it, but it was extremely restrictive. So at one point decided, hey, the best next thing I can do is not cut my budget more, but to go back to school, get this specific degree, figure out the job that I want next that's going to pay at more than double what I'm making right now. So yeah, think about, it's not just restricting until you are living this strict life that is unsustainable. It really should be both, looking at the spending and looking at creating the income.
So tell me about the mindset shift and the journey you went on to making $26,000 a year, to by your 30s having almost $400,000 in investments, $1 million in real estate, and cutting. I think the most dramatic part of it is cutting 20 years off your retirement date. What was that mindset shift, and what did that process look like for you?
It was definitely something that happened over time. There were those epiphany moments that were really significant. I do remember, for example, there was a moment where I had left the social work job. I was going back to school, getting my master's degree, and eventually got my doctorate. And I was making, I think, $32,000 or $36,000. And I went to search for my next job. I had gotten my doctorate at that point. And so I should be looking for a job that's going to pay a lot more. And I still went and searched for a job. I was like, well, $4,000, $6,000 more. That's typical. And then I had this epiphany moment of, what am I doing? I am holding myself back. I absolutely am capable of making more. And so in that moment, my new epiphany was, I'm going to set the filter to $60,000. So I searched for a $60,000 job, and then within a couple months landed the job. And that dramatically changed my life, because it wasn't only the mindset shift of, oh, I'm maybe holding myself back, but also the confidence booster of, I actually got a job making that amount. So it made me think, what are some other ways that I can dramatically basically make quantum leaps in my financial life? And I've done that in lots of other ways since then, advocating for title changes, advocating for salary changes, and it's just catapulted me to think bigger and bigger.
Why do you think you were holding yourself back and looking for jobs that were essentially underneath what your qualifications were?
I think number one, when I was trained in psychology to go into the world of psychology. Almost everyone told me you're going to make not that much money. And so it was just this belief that this is what's normal. Asking for more or expecting more would be out of the norm. So I think I had heard that from a lot of different sources around me. And then also for a long time, I believed if you want to help people, you needed to be willing to sacrifice. So wanting more money was actually something that I felt a little bit of shame around. And I don't feel that way at all anymore. In fact, I feel like the more money I have, the more empowered I am to have the resources to continue doing really big things in the world with the money I make. But yeah, back then I felt like it was just normal. That was what my life was going to be.
If you had to credit one of your habits for fast tracking your financial future, what would it be?
Hmm. There are many, but I'm going to say investing because investing is truly the best way to create wealth and to create passive income by just putting your money into investments. On average, you're going to grow your money by 10% every single year. There's no way that you can multiply your money in that same way by saving it or by working for it. So, investing is very key.
Yes, having your money work hard for you and making
Yes.
smart decisions with it. Absolutely. So, what's one outdated money belief that you see educated professional women clinging to? And what belief would you replace with it instead?
I think I love traditional employment. I love going for a traditional job, but I also would say majority of people think that they still need to go out and get a job to make money when there are so many new opportunities to make money as a self-employed person, and it's becoming more and more of a trend. It's becoming easier to do with platforms like Upwork and Fiverr, or the creator community, creating social media content to lead traffic to your own website. There's just so much opportunity in doing something for yourself. So I think the more that you can think about how your skills could translate into something you could do and make money on your own, it's not only really empowering, but it just might be a great alternative to traditional employment.
So let's talk about your book for a second. You have a book, 101 Ways to Build Wealth, which those are a lot of ways. Um,
Yeah.
so that's quite a toolkit. So if you have someone who's ready to graduate from basic budgeting to serious wealth building, what are your top three power moves from your toolkit?
So, based on what's in the book, yes, the 101 ways. Number one, the book is outlined just like my 5 step wealth framework. So, it starts with creating that vision. So, I would say number one, start journaling today. Even if you have 10 minutes, 15 minutes after you listen to this podcast, open up a Google Doc, grab a piece of paper, write down what your dream life would look like. And then number two, see if you can translate that dream life into numbers, because that will start giving you goals you can work towards. So if you know you want to travel so many times per year, or you want to provide your kids with private school tuition, you can turn those things into actual numbers and just start writing down those numbers in a spreadsheet. And you'll eventually come up with a number that is your dream amount of income. And that's going to give you, again, a really concrete goal to work towards. Number three, I would actually say something that's a little bit unrelated to the other two. So you have your vision, you're turning it into a number crunching. But number three, I would say check on your investments, because this is something that a lot of people miss. Your investments, there's so many ways that you can earn more money based on the way you are invested. So for example, you could be invested in index funds or ETFs. All of those things are going to have an expense ratio that really varies. So it could be, anywhere from 0.03% to 1%. You want to check and make sure you're not paying a lot in fees when it comes to your investments. And then also make sure you are checking on your investments every single year. Make sure that your money is not just sitting in basically what's called a holding account, that it's actually invested in something. Because if it's in the holding account and it's not invested, it's not making any money. So just something that's really important that everyone should know about as a third tip.
And when you said make sure you check on your investments, I thought, okay, what's her frequency she's going to say? And you said year. And I think that's very important to point out, year,
Yes.
not day, not every day, not every week. not every month even, like we don't have to check on it, but you're invested appropriately, meaning you are invested, you're not in that holding account like you mentioned, your money is working for you, even if the market's going up or down, that's okay. Just as long as it's invested, it doesn't mean you need to make changes. So I think that's super important, because especially now when things are a little choppy, everyone's looking at their accounts every single day and freaking out, and we don't need to. That doesn't do us any good, freaking out. So just make sure everything's invested appropriately, you're in low cost investments, and giving it a check in once a year, I think, is very good. I wholeheartedly agree.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um,
No, it's not. I am not logging in looking at my investments because that's not the goal, right? Long-term investing is the goal. Long-term planning, we should be thinking 5, 10, 30 years out, not day to day. It's just too stressful.
yes, absolutely. So, kind of from that thinking of, checking your accounts every day, that many people fall into that trap. Um, what's a scarcity habit or like a trap that that looks responsible on the outside, right? Checking my accounts every day, that looks super responsible on the outside, but not necessarily. So, but it actually keeps women small financially.
Yeah. I think the kind of coming back to what you said earlier, spending under our means is important, but also doing the things that are going to take care of you for the long run and making intentional decisions. So, for example, if you decided that you wanted to cut your budget and not pay for insurance, and then something happens to you and you come up with tens and thousands in medical bills, that can be life changing. And it could be as simple as when you go to the grocery store, if you are not buying, organic produce or meat or something with protein, you're not bringing nutrition to your body. That's going to have long-term effects. If you're not maintaining your home to save money, and then all of a sudden something really big happens with your home and it's a huge burden because you didn't upkeep with the smaller things, or same with your car. Those are the kind of things I think about where it's worth the expense to avoid the bigger expense. So just be thoughtful about that. I think sometimes we try to penny pinch if we're in a hard situation, but that can lead to bigger expenses down the road.
Well, it's kind of like the buy it right or buy it twice kind of mentality, right? If you're doing
Yeah,
something right now to cut corners or pinch pennies, and you're, just using an example of buying the cheaper thing because it's cheaper, you could say, "Oh, I'm doing a good job. I'm buying this cheaper thing," whatever it is. But then if you end up having to buy it again in a year or so, you didn't save any money.
yeah,
If you bought maybe the more expensive item, reasonably speaking, and it lasts you 5 years, that ended up being a better investment as far as spending goes versus buying the cheaper thing. So cheaper isn't always best. I
yeah,
think is a big a lesson. And if you start looking at the way where your money is going, is like, oh, do I do that? And it's really easy to
yeah,
identify if you do it, if you sit back and you reflect on some of your purchases,
yeah.
and it ends up costing you more money in the long term.
Yep. I used to be definitely, I would do that with clothes and shoes and just pieces like that. I would maybe buy something that was a little cheaper, and I was shopping all the time. And honestly, these days I buy a few things, they're high quality. I'm barely ever shopping and things last for 10 years. So it's worth it to just buy the right thing the first time.
Sorry, there's banging.
Instruction, no
Yeah,
problem.
they were good for a while.
Oh,
They were
yeah.
quiet for a while. Now they're off of break, I guess. A lot of women delay investing because they feel like they need to be experts first. So, what's your advice to the perfectionists out there who are holding themselves back from starting?
I think it's a good thing that we are being thoughtful about this because investing should be done thoughtfully. We should not be throwing our money into the stock market or trading stocks if we don't know what we're doing, because the truth is you can lose money. So I'll just say that as a caveat. But one of the things that I have actually shared on social media quite a few times for those that are nervous, the best thing you can do is go open up an account. You can open up a brokerage account, which is not a retirement investment account with any special benefits. It's just a plain investment account. You can invest as little as $1 in there. And I would encourage you, go in, set up the account, invest $1, invest it in whatever you want, and just watch it for 30 days. You will learn so much with that hands-on activity, seeing what actually happens in the market. You'll start to ask questions, you'll find yourself Googling things, and you will naturally learn a lot. So I would say do that first. And then second, there are so many amazing books out there. I talk about investing in my book. There's a lot of other great investing books and online information, pages like NerdWallet and Bankrate and all the amazing financial websites. They have lots of basic information too. So the more you can learn about the basics, the more confident you'll get. But that $1 activity is just so low risk, and you'll learn so much by just doing it.
I write for a blog for moms, and I was sourcing ideas to write about, right? And I talk about money and all, and they said, just tell me how to start investing, like literally step by step guide. And so I'm sitting down writing it, and I'm like, do I start off with like, what website do I go to? What website can you go to? And I'm like, yeah, I
Yeah.
will. Like, I'm starting from the beginning. Like, okay, I want to invest. Where do I go? So I said, you could go to an E-Trade. You can go to an E-Trade, a Schwab, or what have you, a Fidelity, and just start to open up an account. And then here are the different brokerage means it's non-retirement, it's after tax money,
Yep.
right? IRA, this is what it stands for. And it was just every step. And someone said to me, thank you so much for writing this, because I wasn't even sure if those websites were legit, like not even
Yep.
knowing where to start. And I think sometimes, when we're talking about money and giving advice and all that, we start at, G when we need to start
Yeah.
at A, right? We just assume everyone knows that, or it's just common knowledge. So just starting right from the beginning of, this is what you need to do, this is the website to go to, this is what you look out for, is so helpful. And because it helps those people that feel like they need to know everything, but they're afraid to ask. But like, no
Yes.
one says, what website do I go to start investing? Like, that almost seems, someone might feel silly asking that, but that could be the simple question that's holding them back from making, changing their life financially.
Yeah. Well, you absolutely need to link to that blog in the show notes so that folks can see it. But it's funny you say that, because I have a masterclass where I talk about investing basics, and I talk about the exact same things that you are talking about. I actually literally walk someone through in video format how to set up the account, how to transfer money from your bank account into the other website, because that's how you get your money into it. And then how do you actually make an investment? There's a bunch of lingo on there that would probably throw you off. So I walk through, here's how you pick the thing you want to invest in. Here's how you make a trade, because a lot of people don't know what making a trade is. The fact that you can only invest with $1, a lot of people think you have to have a lot of money. So all of those pieces, yeah, if you have those questions, you are not dumb. They are not bad questions. So many people don't know this, and we all have to start somewhere. So definitely check out this blog post, check out my masterclass, get the basics so that you feel really good about it.
Money coaching is really having a moment, because there's been a huge gap between like advising, right? Financial advising is really, it has been for a long time just giving advice on investments and investing money. But people want advice. Like, we go to a financial advisor for advice. And that's where I think money coaching is really filling that gap. If, the financial advisors you're coming across or aren't giving you that, what you're looking for, like the
Yeah.
basics, like how to start, like, what do I even do to start? How do I even identify the money to invest? Right. That's why I need to get my budget in order, and get a hold of my money that way. But not all advice is created equal. So what's one piece of popular personal finance advice that you don't necessarily subscribe to?
Well, I will also say, if you are, I'm a money coach, I'm a financial educator, even me, I share information all day long, but please, please be your own advocate. Always check on information. do your due diligence, make sure that you really trust the people you're listening to and don't just trust everything you read on the internet because there is some bad information out there. But I would say when it comes to investing, there is a lot of promotion of more of a day trading style where you can just make fast money. And that's just one of the most risky ways to try to invest your money and make a return. If you look at the long-term returns of the market, the 10% returns you can get when you're looking at 5, 10, 30 years and planning it out in advance, that's going to be way less risky and not guaranteed by any means, but very, very much more dependable than trying to do some day trading. So I just feel like that it's something that some people really enjoy. That's not part of my philosophy. And I think if you're reading that information, you need to understand it's just not easy passive income. It comes with a lot of risk.
For someone listening that feels behind, overwhelmed, or ashamed of where they're at, what's the very first step in your framework that helps them shift from stuck to confident and in control?
The first step is actually releasing the shame. And there's actually an activity in my book. I've done this activity with groups of women live, and it's where we literally walk through an activity of releasing shame. And it's so, so powerful. And if you don't release the shame, you will stay stuck in a mindset of I'm behind, instead of opening up your mindset to there's so much possibility I can start over. And that mindset shift is really critical. And I'll just tell you again from my own story, I got divorced when I was 26 and started completely over. I had about $1,000 to my name, met my husband, and now I'm in this wonderful place. So you can start over with the debt you're in, with nothing in your savings account, with a job you hate. You can transform a lot of things.